What's going on, people? This is Eli Wananda, and in this video I want to talk about the inauthenticity, the fakeness that I think is basically at the heart of modern life. Recently I watched a really good documentary that really brought this home to me. It was a documentary about a guy called Joe Wicks, who is known as the Body Coach, and he does fitness videos, really famous here in the UK. He became really famous during the pandemic, actually, the first big lockdown in 2020, because he started doing YouTube videos, live, basically exercise sessions, training sessions from his front room. And obviously all of us were cooped up indoors, locked up at home. And so hundreds of thousands of people were tuning in every day to watch these live streams. You know, he became like a bit of a social, a social media, actually just not even social media, just media sensation with his training that he was doing. So really big star. He was famous before, but he became a bit of a mega star before. They called him the nation's PE teacher, PE being physical education. So he did this documentary recently on BBC called something on the lines of Confronting My Childhood. And it turns out that Joe Wicks, he grew up in really tough circumstances, very comfortable middle class life in a lot of ways, but his dad was a heroin addict, often off in rehab, and his mum suffered from obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, and so he had these really dark memories about his youth that he had basically suppressed. And it turned out that his whole bubbly, outgoing mindset, a persona, was largely a coping mechanism that he developed as a child to handle the whole rejection that he felt from his dad not being around, and just constantly wanting to be the center of attention because he wasn't getting any attention, frankly, from his parents at home. Really tough viewing at times, really hard viewing. And it just really brought home to me that, that, like I said, he developed this persona of like cocky, arrogant, always being center of attention. But all of that was basically a smokescreen, a way of kind of trying to deal with his situation as he had it in the home. And, that's just somewhat of an extreme version of what we're all going through. We all go through, we all develop that as children. I think basically socialization, what you might call socialization, i.e. how children are raised to become members of society, socialization, hence becoming members of society. A large chunk of that in societies like this in the UK and in modern societies around the world, a large chunk of that involves learning how to front, basically. We're all fronting all the time because we live in these societies, and this isn't something that's purely about modern life and industrial life and capitalist life under capitalism, but life under capitalism 100% depends on us doing this. And what I mean by that is that you're taught to, suppress certain feelings that you might have. You're taught to not talk about certain things, particularly boys and men are taught not to, you've got to be strong, you've got to, you can't cry. Boys don't cry, all that sort of stuff. And then in the playground, I talk a lot about the playground, because so much of our socialization really doesn't really happen in the school rooms per se, or even from our parents per se. So much of it comes from the playground, where we're with our peers on a day-to-day basis. And you learn, it's like a dog-eat-dog world, isn't it? And you learn growing up without even talking about it. You just learn that you can't mark yourself out for attack. You can't mark yourself out to be picked on, to be bullied for being different. You can't mark yourself out for particularly as a boy, you cannot mark yourself out as being someone who might be quite emotional, who might be quite, tactile even. You can't mark yourself out as a boy being someone who is pensive and uncertain, and even being a loner. You can't even mark yourself out as being a loner. You hang around with people because you feel like you need to be in the in group, you know? And this is what happens. And unfortunately, what happens is that as we get older and older, we learn how to, we learn pastimes that will enable us to fit in, to be part of a group. Now, one of my big things, and my friends, my friends, I love you guys, but all of my friends are so into sports. They're really, really into sports, and that's fine. Sport is a wonderful thing. However, I think that the sports banter amongst men, generally speaking, certainly in my experience, comes at the expense of authenticity, of being authentic with each other. We're all grown up now, big men, advancing in years, and we can't sit down and really genuinely talk about how are you, how actually are you, how are things, how are you feeling, what's going on, and it's even if you think about it, it's even like locked into the way that we greet each other. When you greet somebody and say, "Oh, how are you?" What's the answer? "I'm cool. I'm fine." "How are you?" "I'm fine." Never, I'm sure, if you're, never will you say, if someone says to you, "How are you?" Never will you say something that's truly honest. You're not going to say, you're not going to say, if someone says, "How are you?" You're not going to turn around and say, "Well, to be honest, things have been a little bit difficult recently. I'm not so sure about how things are going, at home, or, I'm a bit worried with regard to work, where that's all going, or just I'm a little bit empty. I don't know. I feel like I lack in direction in life, all them kind of things." You're not going to go straight into those things. And I get it. A conversation, you don't want necessarily all conversations to be super deep all the time. Sometimes you do just want to banter and chat something light and funny and whatnot. And you need that. That's fine. Don't take this to be a judgy thing. I'm not judging anybody, including myself. However, I think that we really suffer because almost all of what we talk about with most people is, in my experience at least, my current life experience, is inauthentic, is so far away from what's truly on our hearts, what's truly on our minds, and so on. I want to talk about another thing that I watched, which really pierced to my heart. This was a vlog by a fellow vlogger called Adrian Logan. Wonderful YouTuber. Check his channel out, by the way. Really, he does videos where he sits down and he just talks from the heart, shares what's on his mind, and I love it. I feel like me and him would probably get on quite well if we knew each other in real life, because in his most recent video in particular, he talked about how the video was called "I found out that I suffer from social anxiety," or something on those lines, and he talked about how often when watch the video. I'll summarize a couple of key bits that stood out for me. He said that often when he talks to people, often when he was younger in particular, he found it difficult to talk to people, not so much because he didn't have anything to say per se, but he felt that the people he is talking to don't really value the things that he's saying. They're not really listening to the things that he's saying. They're not really paying attention. They're not valuing it. And so Adrian himself, he felt like he was constantly speaking really quickly so that he could get the conversation over with, so that he could just get on with something else, because he felt that people weren't listening to him. And so he said as a result, he kind of developed a stutter because he was constantly talking quickly because of, and that really, really resonates to me. I feel that on like a basic fundamental level. Almost all the people that I ever talk to, aside from a cherished few, vanishingly few number of people that I can count on one hand, most of the people that I talk to, just as I'm talking, I can see it in their eyes, and I can see it in their facial expression. I can see it in their body movements. I can see it in how they're positioning themselves. I can see it in, they're just not really interested. A lot of people, when you talk, and I probably do it as well to a lot of people, but I see it in others when I'm talking with them, oftentimes they are merely waiting until they can next talk. So you're saying something, and you can see it in their face. There's always that fronting comes along, that kind of like mask of like, I see it with family members all the time, by the way. You're talking, they're not really listening. They're almost beginning to talk about whatever it is that they wanted to talk about. Oftentimes, the things that they want to talk about are completely, in my opinion, to me, they come across as really shallow, really surface level, really, it's just banter, it's just comedy, it's just, that sort of stuff. And they just listen, when I'm talking, I feel like they're just listening, they're not listening. They're hearing, they're not listening, if that's the right way to put it. Because they just want to get on with whatever they want to talk about. And what often happens as well is that, I'm someone who I'll try to bring the conversation towards something, for example, if you're meeting with somebody all the time you meet with them, you're always just talking about money, for example, you're always just talking about football, or you're always just talking about whatever it might be, just stupid joking nonsense. I'll try to say something. I'll try to bring the conversation towards something that is a bit more of depth, but you see people's eyes glaze over, kind of like you almost might get this kind of facial expression. That kind of thing. They'll just tail off, and it's a shame. But basically, this video from this vlog from Adrian Logan, really, it resonated with me because I think I'm similar to him. I think I also suffer from some level of social anxiety, if you want to label it that, because I feel like a bit of a misfit generally amongst most people that I know. You might think that the fact that I've got a YouTube channel and I vlog and I'm out here putting myself out here, you might think that as a result, I'm someone who's really, really socially confident and really, really, gregarious and so forth. But trust me, if you met me in person, in real life, you'd probably be kind of surprised, maybe, because I might not have much to say. I'm not someone, for example, who, will entertain you with my words, entertain you with stories. I don't have many stories. I'm not a good storyteller. I'm actually a terrible storyteller. As far as, like if something happened in the past and, some people are really good at saying, yeah, and they love it. It's like, oh, good. Everyone's listening to me. Let me tell you what happened here. And like, they're so into it. And it's a joyful thing. Storytelling is a wonderful thing. I know I love people like that who can tell a story and they'll tell it. And whereas for me, if I want to talk about something that happened, sometimes people say, oh yeah, Eddie, tell them about that time when X, Y, Z. I actually immediately feel like a kind of, because I feel I don't want to perform, and I feel like it's a bit of a performance for me, and I feel not really up for that performance and part of that probably comes from something in me that I don't want to let these people down. I don't want to, I don't want this story to be a damp squib. It's funny because for example, I don't tell stories, I don't tell jokes, I don't, recount things that happened because I don't want the other people to feel, oh, that was a bit rubbish. Why did you tell me that story? So it's a weird one. I've evidently got somewhat of this social anxiety. But to be honest, going back a little bit to the subject matter, I think we all have social anxiety, and we're all anxious in when we're with one another, and we mask it in different ways. We mask it with the banter. We mask it with the smoking, the drinking, the this, that, and the other. We mask it with sport talk and so forth, and it's a real shame. So yeah, that is really just the main thing I wanted to say. I think that for sure, particularly with regard to young people, most of what I'm thinking about half the time is related to my sons and young people generally, and I think it's really important that we try to enable children to, to be. It's not even just a case of, be yourself, as if yourself is one simple thing that stays the same throughout your life. That's not the case. I'm not saying that there's some like perfectly pure you that you need to be all the time, because we change, we adapt. There's different facets to our character and so forth. But what I am saying is that I think it's really important that children are able to engage with what their feelings are, to engage and express their thoughts, to engage and express their fears, their doubts, their worries, their anger, their hopes, their excitements, and so forth. That's what one thing I love about children is how in tune they are with the emotions within them. They are, not to say that we are not our emotions. We're not our emotions, but it's very, very important that we be aware of our emotions, that we be aware about these energies within us, because as we get older, it's because I think that one of the reasons why we have so many mental illness, mental health problems in society is because we grow up not being able to understand and recognize the emotions within us, and not being able to work through them. Not having the skill set to work through our emotions. And that's like my eldest, for example, he's 4. And one of the things we had a few weeks ago, the challenges that I had a few weeks ago is understanding how to negotiate it when he's having a tantrum. And my go-to, I didn't realize I'd be like this, but I get, although actually thinking back, I get it now. I was always going to be somewhat of a more toward the authoritarian side than not. And that's probably partly because my dad was probably definitely more to the authoritarian side than not. But, I would try, and I have been trying. I just like, if he's shouting, I'll shout. And if he's, crying and raging, I would basically cry and rage, not cry, but I would rage and shout at him to get him to stop doing what I want him to stop doing. But I've realized that actually, that's not the way forward. I give shout to a good friend of mine, a fellow parent friend of mine, who's kind of helped me to see that you're not going to, that's a losing battle. You're not going to win by shouting and using fear to get your child to, stop being angry. What you need to do really is allow them to work through that anger, allow them to express it, divert the energy in a different direction, at that time, so that it can the child can cool off, and then try to work out a way that you can start to talk through those emotions, talk through those feelings, and allow them to, to not feel guilty about feeling the way that they're feeling, but start to get them into the mindset that they can control these emotions, they can control them, they can work through them, they can channel them in different ways, while recognizing them and understanding what is the cause of those emotions, if you see what I mean. And I think that's really important that we do that. And it's not even just children, even as adults. That's like the big lesson that I've learned as a particularly becoming a husband and a father, is it's so important to be able to recognize the emotions within you and to be able to work through those emotions in a way that is going to, help you to offload the negativity, brush off the shake off the funk, shake off the downness, shake off the depression or whatever it might be, shake off the frustration, the heaviness that comes from those things, and instead negotiate them, work with them, work through them, So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. The fakeness, the inauthenticity of modern life has been on my mind this last few days. So I wanted to just kind of get it out there. So yeah. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, shout out to you. This is Eli Wananda, aka an ever evolving brother, aka Africans Arise, aka the generalist vlogger, which is my new tagline. So yeah, if you got any thoughts on this, then wonderful. If not, I hope you've enjoyed it. Bust a like on the video. That'll be all good. And I'll see you for the next one. Peace.